Hello, my name is Moona. I'm here today as a representative from Deaf Unity and just wanted to ask you some questions about your experience and knowledge to do with intersectionality. So before we begin, obviously I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi there, my name is Abigail Gorman. My sign name is A like this, Abigail, or Abigail for the lipstick sign. Yeah. So I work in policy and public affairs at the moment, and I'm also studying for my MSc in gender and sexuality in law at the moment. So yeah, really interesting, and there's a variety of topics covered in that.
It's an interesting subject. So I just wanted to ask you what your term for intersectionality, what does it mean to you?
Well, I sign it like this, like the layers sign. Okay. And really it links to intersectionality is really coined a phrase that was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw in 1989. And she worked as a lawyer, and that she came across a case in America where a black woman applied to work at a car manufacturer's, and she was turned down for the job. So they ended up in court, and she said, look, I've been discriminated against because I'm a black woman and didn't get the job. But the company replied to say, well, we don't discriminate. We do employ black people, but they were men who worked really more on the assembly line, more on the physical part of the business. And we do also employ women, but they were white women who were working as secretaries in the admin area. So that she thought, well, hang on, I'm a black woman, but the employer employs black people and women. But it was like she was discriminated against because of her intersectionality and her layers of her different identity. And sometimes these layers are not always obvious. So it's how these layers of our identity overlap. And that also means that the discrimination can overlap also. And it wasn't until really the 2000s and a post then where people really took on this idea, and just the encouragement of that idea to look at a person not from a 2D perspective, but rather from a whole multiple perspective and the multi-layers of their personality and identity.
So thinking about that intersectionality, do you think we could be talking about this more as members of the deaf community?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, as a deaf community, obviously they've suffered oppression for many, many years, and there's that scar, I suppose, and because of that it creates this sense of togetherness, which is great, but there's a load of variety within that as well. So if you go back to the day of the Deaf Club, for example, there was a strong presence of people getting together, but they were mostly white. So obviously it was brilliant, they could get together and sign and share a language and a culture and identity, but there was also a lot of that was missing. So where were the black deaf people accessing that? So that they were missing. Where were the LGBT people as part of that deaf community? So it's almost like, you know, it's great, I've got my little LGBT community, but then they're also an oppressed community within another oppressed community, if that makes sense. So there's layers to that oppression. So you've also got language, then you've got culture, and a whole variety of other elements to a personality and to their identity, really. And the community needs to become richer and have that. But then there's real value to that. But I don't think we have that at the moment.
You're right, I absolutely agree with that. I think the deaf community definitely needs to come together. But how can we encourage and raise awareness of this intersectionality?
Oh, wow. Well, there's a variety of ways, I guess. Yeah, and you're right. You know, there's also different levels to it, I would say. So, I mean, first thing maybe is workshops, or maybe not workshops, but getting people together, having a presentation, having that conversation, education, schools as well, I think, should embed this within the curriculum so that we can teach people what exactly diversity means. What is it? Also, organisations need to look at themselves and think, you know, statistically, that can be quite important. Think, well, hang on, how many women work in our organisation? How many black people? How many people from an LGBT community? How many disabled people? And if the answer is none of those people, then they need to be encouraging more of those people to apply for jobs and take affirmative action for that. So meaning that, you know, targeting those communities and encouraging them and saying, look, if we don't have many of those kind of people working there, we really need to target that community to encourage them to apply to work for our organisation. And the same could be said for boards as well. So on a board of trustees, for example, if you look around, it's like if you say, you're all sat around a table, let's say, and you're having a discussion and you think, oh yeah, that's interesting. And then you think, well, hang on a minute, who isn't around that table? Well, the exact same people that should be around the table. So, for example, if you're all white and you're all talking about stuff and making decisions about a community, well, you can't make an effective decision if you haven't got, say, any black people represented as part of that conversation, or no people from an LGBT perspective coming in. So you need to invite a whole range of people to that conversation.
I agree, yeah. Thank you for explaining that. That is an important issue about historical oppression of the deaf community. So oppression does actually happen in so many forms. So do you think that this has changed over time? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of services for deaf people, which is great, but it's very white and heteronormative, I would say, and kind of mainstream. So, I mean, for example, the LGBT community, let's say, if a person outs themselves to their family and are rejected by their family, they think, well, hang on, what am I going to do? And they might go to an LGBT organisation, which is great, but then they're not able to communicate as a deaf person. So that becomes another problem. So really, there's loads of organisations out there, but are they accessible to deaf people? No, and that's the problem. And it's like racism within the deaf community itself. We need to, I mean, sometimes these things are not obvious and they're below the surface. And I think we just need to realise that, really, that if you are in a situation you think, oh, hang on, we're in a situation where we're all white, then we're not getting those other perspectives. We need to have conversations with other people and be allies with other communities, rather than that oppressed community having to always be the one to explain themselves or stick up for themselves and have to fight for their rights, rather than saying, oh no, LGBT, I'm not part of that. Actually, instead saying, well, no, I'm not part of that, but I can be an ally to that community. And I suppose it's hearing people have always oppressed us as deaf people, but really there's oppression that happens within the community itself as well. And I think it's becoming a bit fragmented. So instead of that, I think we need to, we're too busy fighting for this equality, but we need to say, hang on a minute, what does my vision of equality mean? It might be different from yours. Mm-hmm. So we need to have that conversation. There's this whole layering of what that really means. And if we have that conversation, then we can really get a picture of what this oppression is like and what it looks like. And then we can then look to solve that. But without having those conversations, it's very difficult. And I think we're stronger together, basically. So we just need to get those conversations going.
Well, thank you so much for explaining that. I did want to ask you about people who have different combinations of identities. For example, I have many identities. I'm a deaf person, as a woman, and I'm Black, and the list goes on. But how can we encourage the deaf community to be a united group? Each person has their own personality, gender, ethnicity, and so on. We need to think about intersectionality as a group and how the concept of intersectionality will spread outwards and what would happen in the future. So what videos are put online about intersectionality can you think of?
Oh, what am I going to do? What? Me? My plans?
Maybe how can others in the deaf community help with this?
Well, I suppose, there's two organisations already set up already, Black Deaf UK and Deaf Rainbow UK, that was just set up 3 years ago, which is great. And they're specialist groups with experience for those communities. Which is great, and they can offer feedback and various things, but organisations need to encourage more consultation, I think, more discussions, talk about when they have new projects or new ideas. They need to make sure, are they accessible, are they inclusive, ask those specialist organisations for their views on how they can be accessed by the deaf community specifically.
Well, I think, there is those two organisations, Black Deaf UK and Deaf Rainbow UK, but there should be more.
Well, women, there's one for women, yeah.
But there's just not enough.
Gender, well, what else? Ethnicity, I know. Yeah, I mean, as we say, if we go back to intersectionality, there's a whole variety that we could have. Black, gay, for example, you could become, well, hang on, where are those organisations for Black gay people? Or, you know, you kind of think, well, I'm a lesbian, hang on, but I'm white. Where does that, I don't know, where does that leave you? So there's lots of different ways that intersectionality works, but we just need to think about collaboration and how we can make that happen. So I suppose we need just a bit more space, I suppose, to be able to talk about those things. And it's important to encourage collaboration and working together, and having the space to have those conversations and ask people how they feel. I mean, Deaf Rainbow UK, you know, has discussions with everyone throughout the UK, and you know, it's like, well, what do you want from us? And they get feedback from the whole range of the LGBT community, and they can then collaborate with their projects. It's also about deaf organisations looking towards these specialist organisations as well, so that they can, again, as I said, collaborate and work together on projects and make sure that things are more cohesive.
Well, we do have those two organisations, and there are other groups as well, but I think there's a long way to go, I think.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, yes, definitely. Well, what would you like to see?
I think I would like to see, actually that's a difficult one, that is. I would like to set up my own group, I think, for deaf Black Islamic women. So it would be like being at home, like what you were saying about culture and barriers, and we can get an opportunity to talk about our mother tongue, our cultural language. In the UK, we've only got a few Islamic women. However, if we were to think about maybe a few more, all over the world, those people with experiences, can maybe 15 of them or so, would be a perfect number to have an empowering group. And I think there's definitely the space for that. I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Yeah, I mean, it's really important because, yeah, people, white people, deaf people from deaf families, it's like just taking on all of those different experiences, really. But we don't have access to those experiences, really. So it's really, if a trans person, for example, you know, there's not really anywhere to go for them. So there's lots of hearing organisations, but but unfortunately deaf people can't access these groups. So again, that's where this fragmentation comes in, really. So we need to be more considerate, I would say, of other people's barriers, and then when we're aware of them, then we're more able to solve them.
Yeah, you're right. Like me and you, we have different identities. I mean, we're both deaf women, but our other identities, they're different. I'm a Black woman, and you can't necessarily relate to that because we have different identities. But we can strengthen our relationships through mutual support, I would say.
Yeah, and together, I mean, barriers we have, we're deaf, I'm a lesbian, you know, my experience and your experience are different. So yeah, we have different layers in common as well.
I think intersectionality is a really important topic actually to talk about in the deaf community. We need to join your ideas with my ideas, and then we can improve our friendship. But ally it's an important term in the deaf community, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's knowing your own identity as well, I think. You know, so people are, you know, might ask me to do a presentation or something, and I'm fine about that. So it's about asking yourself, who am I and what's my identity? So for example, if I get asked to do a presentation or be a part of a board, for example, and you think, well, hang on, am I the right person to be on that board? If there's 4 blokes, maybe it's great if I am the 5th person because I'm a woman and I can balance that out a bit. Or maybe if someone's talking about LGBT issues, maybe I'm the best person to talk about that. Or maybe it's feminism, so maybe there's another woman around the table who would be better to cover that. So it's about being considerate to other people and where they're coming from. So for example, I could be saying, oh, Moona, you know, you could maybe be the best person to talk about a certain issue, or maybe it might be someone else. It's about us empathizing with other people's positions and other people's intersectionality and how that experience is for that person. It's just encouraging the community, really, and giving other people the opportunities to come together rather than pulling each other down all the time.
Yeah, I think the deaf community as a group, we do need to come together more. I don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think the community, really, I think it's great we've got social media. I think that's great. I think that's given us access to a lot of information.
Yes,
Left clubs were great, you know, when people get together and chat, but it's like that's become less now because there's lots of information online. So we're able to access a lot more information just from our own homes. We can have those discussions, we can set up those conversations. So I know I've seen myself in the international deaf community as well, that they're popping up more and more, and you're getting more and more information from them, and having those conversations saying, oh, what do you think about this? And getting other people's perspective, even internationally, which is great.
Yeah.
It's baby steps at the moment, I have to say.
But do you think maybe because of lockdown, there's been both positive and negative effects? Firstly, there's social media that's grown in strength and there's lots of information in BSL, but also, how do you think this has affected deaf people?
Yeah, I mean, social media, and coronavirus, yeah, wow. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? There's loads of different effects. I mean, the lockdown can obviously lead to a lot of isolation. It depends your situation. Do you live by yourself? Do you live with a family member? You know, who have you got to turn to? Who's your support? Obviously, it's great that we can use technology to have signed conversations online. So that's been great to have that. So I feel like, you know, that helps you to feel more connected, but still, it's still not great access to information out there in wider society, really. And so we're still very reliant on each other within the community. So I guess it's positive, negative. I suppose thinking positively and just going, oh yeah, I'm all right all the time. And we shouldn't really be like that, because actually sometimes you do feel a bit rubbish. We want to have a bit of a cry, and that's still all right. And I think we need to accept that that is going to be like that, and it is rubbish, you know. So I think we just need to connect to each other, just be, with friends and family, obviously keep in contact. And I think that social media also shows, I suppose, that we can work more flexibly. We can work from home, and so we can spend more time with the family, and that sometimes suits people very well. And also for people with additional disabilities who maybe have a problem with mobility, it's been great for them not having to commute anywhere to be able to do their work. And also we can attend international events but online, so that's been great. And we could talk about a variety of different issues and topics, which has been really positive. We could talk about sport, about discrimination, about inequality, and a range of different perspectives. And we can learn from each other, which has been great. So I think that's been a massive positive.
I think, if deaf women can come together, this would be a really good thing. It would be amazing. But I have seen a deaf women's group, and they discussed these 3 different topics. It was absolutely amazing. It was so empowering. But I have a final question about FrontRunners, what they are and what we can learn from that.
Yeah, so really FrontRunners is a leadership program. It's based in Denmark for a period of time, so it's 1 year long.
Yeah, you moved there, didn't you, to Denmark?
Yeah, I had to actually go there. Yeah, it's cold. But as I say, there's no such thing as bad weather. It's only bad clothes, which means that if you've got ski clothes and everything, you're going to be fine. So, yeah, I brought some of the wrong clothes, yeah. So, yeah, I thought, 80%, just in case I brought loads of other things. Some clothes were wrong, but anyway, yeah, so it's a leadership program focusing on a load of different topics. So, transgender, bilingualism, deaf history, deaf studies, and media. And it also looks at organisations and exploring a variety of deaf organisations as well, the positives and negatives, so WFD, EUD, and other organisations. And also looking within our own communities, LGBT, looking at Deaf Sport UK, seeing how we can engage better, thinking about how we can encourage other organisations to get involved, a whole load of things really, which made my head spin. I guess, talking about families, and we were like a little family in the end, and it was just amazing. I just realised I don't know, it's loads of things I didn't realise about our own history that I learned, different perspectives about language, And I don't know, it just made me realize a lot of things, a lot of knowledge, a lot of interconnected things, a lot of things about deaf history I hadn't realized before. I just thought, things about our own identities as well, we explored that we didn't even realize. It gave me a lot more confidence about my identity and my deaf identity. And my ideas changed really as a result of FrontRunners.
How has that changed then?
Well, things like my cochlear implant, I'd had that fitted 3 months before I went. My hearing got worse, so it was sort of almost fully deaf anyway. And I thought, I don't want to lose all my hearing, because I want to be able to use whatever I've got. So I had that, and someone asked me there and said, if everybody could sign in the world, would you have had your cochlear implant? And I thought, oh my goodness, maybe I wouldn't. Yeah, you're right, because it's really about fitting in with people.
Yeah, but we have to, don't we? We have to engage with other people. I mean, we learn to speak, we learn to live.
Yeah, every day.
Hearing aids, cochlear implants, it's frustrating.
Yeah, every day. Yeah, even if it's just for 5 minutes. I was thinking, yeah, I'm adapting so that I can have these conversations with people, and maybe they only last 5 minutes. But there's a massive value in my own deaf history and culture, really. And I don't know, 1970s, 1980s, there was lots of stuff going on in the deaf community, fighting for rights and everything, and protesting that's happening. But it seems to have disappeared now and gone by the by. So I don't know what's happening. So I feel like as the younger deaf community, they need to get more involved and need to have a bit of that fight in them, like we used to have earlier on in our history. So really, FrontRunners, I suppose, aims to give people that confidence and that expression, and that, talking about it, it was, I really recommend it. It was amazing.
So when you finish and you come back, what will you do after that?
Say that again?
So when you've finished doing what you're doing in your programme, when you come back to the UK, what will you do? How will you use your experience to help others in the UK in the deaf community?
Well, I'm studying to be a human rights trainer, so that means that I can do travelling and doing little different workshops, delivering empowerment workshops, etc. In China, where else have I been? Things about being Black and lesbian, looking at different perspectives, encouraging others to look at different perspectives. So really just encouraging deaf youth to get involved. I think, I'll get involved in a lot more panels, I think, to sort of stretch those perspectives out and get involved in a lot of things.
I agree. As we get older, I think the responsibility goes to the next generation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I wouldn't say I was young anymore, but
oh, we're getting older.
On to the younger deaf youth. Yeah, so I think we just need to build a bridge maybe between the young deaf community who don't have any idea of the history and the protests that used to go on, and the older deaf community, and build that link, and then, so it's kind of about, I suppose, the younger generation listening to the experiences the older generation have, and then also the older generation saying, well, hang on, maybe change is good, and embracing some of that new stuff coming through.
So going forward then, how do you think we can change that?
Well, more successful communication. I think we need to listen more, have discussions. People are very defensive when you have conversations about stuff, really, but I suppose it's about really listening.
I think so. I think it might be uncomfortable to have these conversations. I agree.
Right. Yeah, I suppose people they feel defensive. They think, hang on, why are you interested in that? And hang on, what's that about? And I think as an oppressed community, it's about trying to, it's not about letting go of that, but it's also about being able to have the conversation productively so that then we can solve it, having that interplay between people rather than a lot of defense. There's a lot of organisations out there with lots of different aims in mind, and they're aiming at different communities, but it's about sort of bringing that fragmented community together, I think.
So thank you for that. Do you have any final questions before we go?
Just listen to each other. I think that'd be really important. Have kind conversations. Love each other.
I think we should add allyship. That's important too, to be listening and to be kind to each other, respecting each other as individuals and appreciating the person. So thank you for everything, Abigail. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Hi there. Deaf Unity wanted to give just a brief update about our BSL courses. We currently offer Introduction to BSL, Level 1, Level 2 and Level 3. All our courses are taking place online at the moment, through Zoom. Maybe you're really interested in learning sign language. Maybe you want to advance your skills or take them to a professional level. Why not join one of our courses? For more information about these courses and their content, have a look at our website. You can also have a look at this poster we've been sharing. Please do feel free to share it out on your social media channels. Maybe you can give it to your family and friends. Maybe you can give it to your work colleagues, or put it out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and all the other channels that you have. Thank you so much.